Hi and welcome to Slick Willy Fly. Hope you're enjoying a nice cocktail with me. So what we're going to tie today is a Zonker Predator. And the reason I call it the Predator is because this fly is really good to catch any predatory fish. This fly right here would work great on the inshore for snook, tarpon, sea trout, snapper, you name it, anything in the inshore. I think it's equally as great when you're chasing largemouth bass, smallmouth bass. I can definitely see a big brown trout sucking this thing down, rainbow trout. This is just a good fly for any kind of predator fish. So the one we're going to tie today is for the inshore. I'm going to tie the exact same fly but in an olive or chartreuse colors. And I'm going to use a saltwater hook. So that's really why the one I'm going to tie is for inshore. So just, you make it size appropriate for what you're going to fish for and let it go. So for the hook, I'm using a B10S Stinger. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to use the fly as I describe materials. So for the body, I'm going to use UV Polar Chenille in olive green. For the wing, I'm using Zonker, Rabbit Zonker, and this is actually a very small Rabbit Zonker. This is barred Rabbit Zonker. I don't see the size, but it's about the smallest Rabbit Zonker you can get. And I prefer it not to be the really big, puffy Rabbit Zonker. I just like this little bit more minimalistic way of thinking about it. And of course, for the tail, all this silly leg, I'm going to use two types. I'm going to use a little bit of chartreuse and I'm going to use a little bit of barred olive. So I have olive and I have chartreuse black flake. And for the bead, I'm going to use a yellow painted lead medium-sized dumbbell eye. That's all the materials we're going to use. For thread, I'm going to use Uiltra and chartreuse. So I say we change the camera angle. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Having another sip of the cocktail. Super easy fly. This is a crazy simple fly. It looks amazing. It looks complicated, but I promise you, this is a great easy tie. So let's change the camera angle and let's tie a fly. All right. So let's get our hook started. I got my chartreuse thread ready. I'm going to put a little bit of super glue on this hook. I hate when materials spin. One thing that I forgot to mention, you need a little bit of anything, a waste of anything, a chenille or any kind of something you could put on the back to give this hook a little bump, and that's so that the silly legs spread out. I have a little tiny piece of brown chenille, polar chenille, which I'm going to use to make this little bump on the back of this hook. And the only thing I'm going to do with this is I'm not even going to take it up the hook. I'm just literally wrapping it on itself. I'm just trying to make a little bump that will force the silly legs to spread out. And that right there is plenty. And I'm probably going to trim this up because this color wasn't really the color I was going to go for in this fly. It doesn't really matter. Trim it a little bit just to keep it neat. If you had just a little anything, a little regular little chenille, and any leftover material from a previous fly would have been perfect for making this little bump. All right, so like we said, we're going to use two colors of silly legs. And I have no rhyme or reason here. Do I put the dark on the inside? Do I put the more Chartreuse on the outside? I think I'm going to put the Chartreuse in the center and put the darker on the outside edges. So the Chartreuse, I mean, I don't know, 3 legs, plenty. It's just going to go right down the middle. So I'm just going to put it on here about as even as I can. I might have grabbed 4. I did grab 4 by accident. Doesn't matter. And I do want them to be a little bit on each side. Remember, this is gonna go hook side up. So when you place your materials, keep in mind, you know, I give it this little draw down. Is what I'm getting at, because you don't want them to ride in the wrong orientation. Just like that. Nice. And now the next material that I'm going to use is going to be the olive silly legs, and I'm probably going to put 2 on each side. I'm going to try to be a little bit more careful when I take these. It's so easy to grab too many. It's not the end of the world. In this kind of a fly, if I grab too many, I just use them. It's not like fish are going to sit here and count silly legs. So again, I'm just putting them on the hook. This time I'm going to put them on the side, maybe a little bit more to the bottom than on the side. So that's my side. Now I'm going to do the opposite side. You know, you can add flash to this fly. You could put a little crystal flash in here if you wanted. I have enough flash in the body material, so I don't think that we need any additional flash for this fly. Alright, so that's all of them. And you don't have to trim them now. You could trim them later. But I'm just going to take them all in my hand. I'm trying to not stretch anything, because if you stretch them, when you cut them, they will be too short. I'm basically just trying to hold them straight without stretching them, and I'm going to cut them as long as I possibly can. I can always trim them more. But that looks awesome. That's just perfect. So now I'm going to get a little bit of my chenille going, and I'm just going to cut off, I don't know, about 8 inches. Because I want to wrap this kind of tight. And if it's not enough, I can always put more on, so it's not really a problem if I didn't cut enough chenille. The biggest problem that I have now is keeping the silly legs back. That's really the only part of this fly that is a challenge. Otherwise, this is the world's easiest tie. So once you have your chenille started, you need to bring the thread all the way back to exactly where the silly legs ended, and then you can get your chenille out of the way. And I normally put my dumbbell eyes first, and today I forgot. So we're going to put the dumbbell eye on right now. I tend to put them, that was a little too far. I tend to put them, I want to give myself enough distance to make a nice clean head. A few wraps in both directions, making sure that it's centered, which it looks pretty centered. And then I do my figure 8, which really locks it in. I'm just going over the hook and under the dumbbell eyes. Perfect. I can get my thread out of the way. Back to my chenille. Now when I wrap the chenille, I'm not going to use the rotary function because it'll make just a disaster with all these legs. But you do want to draw back the fibers as you wrap. And you don't want to go, on this particular fly I would say you want to keep your wraps tight. So just work your way up, nice and tight. And even when I get to the dumbbell eyes and I'm starting to think, okay, I'm here now, I'm going to give this a couple of extra wraps and really just push it in there nice and tight. Because this polar chenille is what makes this fly awesome. It keeps that zonker right where we want it. And that's probably enough. So now I can bring my thread back, go under the eyes, and capture this chenille. And now I can trim this off. Notice I never cut on the same side as my thread bobbin. I just trimmed off some fibers that were going the wrong way. I don't want fibers going towards the eye of the hook. Now I'm going to take a second, I'm going to take a needle and I'm going to very quickly dig out as much of the trap as I can. You can actually take, and whatever tool you have, just to dig out as much as you can. That looks pretty good. So what I need to do now is I need to invert the hook. And when I put it in the vise, I don't put it in at the flat part of the hook. I put it down here at the bend because I need to have space to work here. So the last material for this fly is, well, second to last if you count UV resin, is Zonker. I'm going to get my Zonker out. And now we're going to cut a piece of Zonker. And I want it to be a little too long. I can always trim it. And that's plenty long right there. I can always trim it. So what I do is I separate the fur so I don't ruin this Zonker piece, and then I cut just the skin part is all we're going to cut. Just like that. And now the remaining Zonker there is still very usable. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out about so that the front ends up maybe a hair long so I could trim it. And what I'm looking for is where this part of the hook lines up with the skin. So I'm just going to make a little mark with my needle. I'm going to hold it there. I'm going to bring it to the hook. And now I'm going to punch it through. So now I know that my length is perfect. So now I'm just going to take it. I'm going to stretch it a little bit. I got to bring the thread back in front of the dumbbell eyes, because no thread behind the dumbbell eyes now. And you can moisten it a little, it helps. I'm going to give it a little bit of a stretch, and I'm going to lock this in. Couple of loose wraps, making sure I like it, and I do. Looks really good. And now you can just crank it down. Just gotta make sure you like where it's sitting, that it's not twisting. And once you've started cranking it down, you can come in with a pair of scissors and you can trim off this waist, that little tag. So now you have a choice to make. Do you want to put a weed guard or do you not want to put a weed guard? So for me, I know that where I'm going to fish this fly, I don't really need a weed guard. But if I was going to put a weed guard, I'd do it right now. So, but this fly is, for my use in this particular fly, this is perfect. So it's just a whip finish. Get my razor and trim off my thread. Okay, so now I'm just going to invert the fly again just to make my life easy for the UV resin portion. Perfect. That just looks perfect. So a little bit of UV resin on that knot. Got a little wild hair there. You know, when you're going to use UV resin, it's so much better to just take a second and clean everything up. Make it look as pretty as you can. Probably doesn't amount to anything for the fish, but I think it's important for me personally that it looks nice. I want all my flies to look nice. You need just a tiny amount of resin, a little tiny drop on the between the eyes, a little bit on the knot. That right there is plenty. Now we're going to use a little bit of gravity. Maybe I put the clamp on it so I can keep the silly legs where they're supposed to be, and just use a little bit of gravity here. Get my lamp and zap it. And now that zonker is locked in nicely. That's not going anywhere. And this is a wicked fly. So the only thing left to do now is decide if your zonker's too long. And if you think your zonker's too long, you would trim it the exact same way that that we trimmed it off the original piece. You separate the fur and you trim just the leather patch. But I don't think this is at all too long. I like when my leather patch is about the same length as the silly legs, which you can see there. The leather patch and the silly legs are almost the same length. Alright, so we're back. So there it is. This is an awesome fly, super simple. It's going to have great action in the water. Remember, when you fish zonker has to be really wet before you see a fish. For a zonker to work correctly, it needs to be like saturated. So keep that in mind. But yeah, super happy with the way this turned out. These are both going to fish great. The orange and the chartreuse, these are going to be killers. So hope you enjoyed it. The Zonker Predator. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Don't forget to check me out in future videos and on Instagram. Good luck catching and see you on the next video.